Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the bookshelf, or welcome if you're new. I'm Grace, and today we are going to be answering some questions about me that I posted on my Instagram stories because you guys are a little invasive. So let's get into it. If you don't know me, I'm Grace, and I make lifestyle videos. I make some book content. I do fashion as well. But today is not that day. Because today we are doing some quick Q&A, get to know me, recommendations, advice video. We're doing a little catch up because, it's been a while since I did one of these. And now that I'm more established and you guys know me a bit better, I think it's time to revisit some classic questions. So let's get started. These were submitted on my Instagram stories, so if you haven't followed me at grace.fountaindaily, then you can be involved in picking video topics, book recommendations, which books I read next, outfits, makeup. You can see what products I recommend, and you can also hear very important details about my day-to-day life that I know would be crushing if you did not have them. So, biggest bookish ick or red flag? I'd have to say this one is when it's not actually enemies to lovers and it's more so just fan service for the author, which isn't even it's just author service basically. This is where I'm trying to think of a specific example. I have one. It is in a book called Nothing Like the Movies by Lynn Painter. And normally, look, I love Lynn Painter. I have all of her books. That's one of her books right there, the yellow one. I'm obsessed with Lynn Painter. But there's just one tiny thing that I don't love so much about some of her, well, one of her books, and several other authors do this as well, especially with YA, which is where you'll have a couple and they're like smooching or something, and like you can tell because you're the reader and you've read like both perspectives that like she likes him and he likes her, and so you know that, but he doesn't really know that for sure. And he starts like, it's getting like hot and heavy and he's not really asking for consent. He's just like doing it. And if she's like not fighting him off, then he takes that as like a sure. And I have some qualms with that personally because I think that showing consent in books is very important, and movies as well, because we grow up watching that, and like it or not, it does form how our brain works and how we interpret dating and relationships and any form of intimacy. And if you're not showing consent, then you're basically encouraging not asking for consent. It also makes it seem normal because sometimes we've been taught from a young age that like asking for things ruins the moment. Like I've seen a lot of guys online make videos about like, should I ask a girl, like, can I kiss you before I do? Or does that like ruin the vibe because they've been told by like their sister or somebody that it does ruin the vibe? But it's all in the delivery, like anything else. So example, if you're, having dinner with somebody and you're, like staring at each other and it's getting very mystical, magical, and then, they say, so can I kiss you? Yeah, that delivery would kind of ruin the vibe. But if you're just like, you know, very suave about it, then it's fine. It's just in the delivery that's important. It's important to display that it doesn't ruin the vibe and that it's normal and acceptable and honest and earnest as well. So my biggest bookish red flag is when books directly contradict that and basically say, no, you don't need consent because you're on the same wavelength, right? And I'm like, not really. Not really, no. We know that, but he doesn't. So that's why it's important. Next one. This one is from It's Me, Kayla the author, on Instagram, who is very chatty. We're always chatting on Instagram, and she always has the cutest responses to my questions. Author you haven't read yet, but want to read. There are many, okay? There are many authors that I have not gotten to that I want to read. One of them is like a romance author, some are fantasy. V.E. Schwab, I've been meaning to try for ages, but my TBR is like 50 books. So that is yet to be discovered. I recently have broken into the like James Dashner Dasher, I forget his name, L.J. Smith, Lee Bardugo fantasy. So those were some authors that I've been meaning to try that I did get to, but some authors that I haven't read yet and want to read. This is The Blackbird Oracle by Deborah Harkness. I got this a year ago at Barnes & Noble, and I have not gotten to it yet. Okay, no shame there. Okay, we all have our own timelines that we're working with, but I'll just read you the back real quick. Deborah Harkness first introduced the world to Diana Bishop, an Oxford scholar and witch, and vampire geneticist Matthew de Claremont in A Discovery of Witches. Drawn to each other despite long-standing taboos, these two otherworldly beings found themselves at the center of a battle for a lost enchanted manuscript known as Ashmole 782. Since then, they have fallen in love, traveled to Elizabethan England, dissolved the covenant between the three species, and awoken the dark powers within Diana's family line. Now Diana and Matthew receive a formal demand from the congregation. They must test the magic of their 7-year-old twins, Pip and Rebecca. Concerned for the children's safety and desperate to make sure they avoid the fate that led her parents to spellbind her, Diana decides to forge a different path for her family's future and answers a message from a great aunt she never knew existed, Gwyneth Proctor, whose invitation simply reads, "It's time you came home, Diana." On the hallowed ground of Ravenswood, the Proctor family home, and under the tutelage of Gwyneth, a talented witch grounded in higher magic, a new era begins for Diana, a confrontation with her family's dark past and a reckoning with her own desire for even greater power, if she can let go, finally, of her fear of wielding it. This seems like if the Nevermore series and Wednesday and a little bit of true crime had a baby. And that is exactly my kind of book. So Deborah Harkness is one author that I really, really want to read as soon as I'm finished with my Maze Runner series that I'm currently reading right now. Next one, and I'll stop putting them on the computer because I'm tired of holding it. So I'm just going to put them up on the screen so you guys can read along with me. But you can only pick one, Conrad or James Beaufort. This is an excellent question because I have been debating this since Maxton Hall came out, like, I don't know, like 2-3 years ago. Because James Beaufort is, aside from the complicated in-law situation, interesting. So, just to break it down, James Beaufort is from a series called Maxton Hall. He is the main love interest, and he is very wealthy. He comes from like a fashion designer family, which I think is interesting because a lot of, romance shows, the guy's just in business and you don't really get any other details. So I like details. And James Beaufort is part of like a fashion design company. Very cool. And he has a twin sister who really wants to run the company, and she has a lot of great ideas. And she's a great business inspiration to me personally. And he is funny, and he's getting in touch with his emotions recently, as men do when they get, to be an adult. They realize that they have feelings and that they should deal with them. And he is trying to figure out his family life and how he's going to reject his father from that. Very complicated season 2 storyline. Unless you've been living under a rock, you know who Conrad is. He's from The Summer I Turned Pretty. He is the iconic watch. He is the iconic watch wearer. He is the iconic watch wearer, and he sports some glasses maybe and some dad jeans from the 90s. And he is also the iconic beach confession man. Okay? Don't marry him, be with me. Like that whole scene was Conrad. We've all seen the edits. I'm going to evaluate this as if they're both real, which I go to college with a bunch of frat dudes. So this is not realistic, but I'm going to pretend that it is for my own joy. So if I met James Beaufort, right away I would have concerns about whether our families would really mesh together because I'm very family oriented. He's very close with his sister. So I would immediately have questions of what's Christmas going to look like because your dad's a psychopath and my dad likes to barbecue. So not sure how those two are going to work themselves out. His mom's dead, so that's fine. My mom, that's fine. Problem solved, I guess. He has a sister that I think I'd be super close with. I think we're both very business minded, very analytical. Conrad also has a weird dad, but his is not a psychopath because I'm convinced that James Beaufort's dad killed his mom. I don't know how, but I know. And Conrad's mom just died of cancer, and his dad is kind of a sleazeball, but he's not like murderous. You know what I mean? So I think I'd be okay with that, but then I'd also have to put up with Jeremiah at every Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I don't really want to put up with Jeremiah because I don't think I could get through a family dinner without making fun of him because he is exactly like the guys that I go to school with, and it's painful for me. But also, Conrad and I have tons in common, and Conrad is very good at expressing his emotions later on in the series when, he's not 18. And I feel like we'd have a lot in common. Also, James Beaufort, in case I didn't make this clear, is also very famous. He's a very famous guy in the world of Maxton Hall. So automatically, I would have some publicity things to worry about. Like, am I going to be followed to school? Am I going to be stalked? My private life is kind of gone if I'm dating James Beaufort. So I'd have to say, logistically, Conrad would be the better option. James Beaufort is delightful. But I think Conrad is just more realistic for like my day-to-day life, because James wants to reject his family's lifestyle, which means he's not going to have money. And Conrad's going to be a doctor. So in this economy, I'm like, Conrad's the better option. But, ooh, I like this one. If you can be a vampire for a day, would you spend it in Twilight or Vampire Diaries universe? Okay, for those who don't know, I'm currently watching the Vampire Diaries. I just finished season 1, so I'm going to be starting season 2 very soon. And I have seen all the Twilight movies, and I've read the first Twilight book, and I'm also reading the Vampire Diaries book. So I am very absorbed in the story, and I do know the entire plot of the Vampire Diaries. And make sure to comment your responses to these questions because I want to know if anybody would pick James Beaufort and the very complicated in-law Christmas ordeal. Twilight, automatically, I do love the setting of Forks, and Vampire Diaries also takes place in a small town, but Twilight, I would be a little bit worried about the other vampires and the crime rates. Vampire Diaries, though. But see, then I might be able to be with Klaus. I would say Vampire Diaries because I think Mystic Falls is a little bit more idyllic than Forks. I need sunshine for like my mental wellness, and Vampire Diaries has more sunshine in the town than Twilight. So I have to say Vampire Diaries, and I think the characters are just more interesting and the writing is a little bit better than Twilight. This one is a little bit of a different vein. This one is more advice-based, so I'm very excited. Favorite study tip that helps with school? I'm back with my Starbucks drink. This is a dragon drink. I've been getting into those lately. They have a little bit less, I don't think they have any caffeine. Favorite study tip that helps with school? I think you have to treat school like a job because a lot of times you see it as a supplement to whatever else you're doing. So if you are working, you see it as something to fit between the time, and it's easy to fall behind because you're tucking in an hour here, an hour there. And one of the best things that I've done is to see it as a job. School is a job. Going to classes, you're working actively towards your degree or, bachelor's, master's, whatever you're doing. And you also have to treat it like you're setting aside time in your planner. I'm going to take 2 hours and I'm going to prepare for this quiz. Or I'm going to prepare for this exam. And I'm going to take notes on the lecture slides before class tomorrow so I can ask questions and get in the professor's good graces. And those are all very important things that you might not think about if you're just thinking of school as like, well, I have to do it. I have to be there. I'll just get through it. And C's get degrees, which, by the way, is a completely stupid thing. C's get degrees if you're not on scholarship. C's do not get degrees if you're on scholarship. Like, I need B's and A's in order to keep all of my assorted things. This one's a very important one. I think that in this day and age, with everything going on, everything that happened in 2025, it's really important to discuss like political things as well and make sure that we're all on the same page. So the question is, what's your favorite One Direction song? Because One Direction truly could heal the world if everyone gave them a proper chance. Because I'm not a psychopath like James Beaufort's father. My obvious answer is right now, from the iconic album Midnight Memories. I mean, Zayn's vocals alone transport me to another planet, basically. The song genuinely is one of my favorites. One of my favorite videos of theirs, like out of music videos and interviews and everything, is when they're performing in San Siro, and all the fans made the country flags and the nationality flags, and they hold them up during song, and you can tell that all of the boys are thinking, wow, I really made it. I made it out of my small town, and I'm performing in a stadium for 80,000 fans. And that's my favorite song of theirs. He followed closely, by the way, with Night Changes from their album 4 that came out in 2014, because that was the song that made me a fan. I was scrolling on YouTube and I randomly got recommended their video, and I noticed that I hadn't heard of the song before because I grew up around One Direction, so I was hearing like the titles of their songs and I was hearing snippets of it when I was a kid, but I had never heard of Night Changes and I had never seen the music video. And I randomly watched it and I was like, this is actually really good. Because it's easy to say that you're not a fan of something when all you've heard are the really overplayed radio hits. And Night Changes was never a big hit, like where I am. And I never seen the music video, and it's a very good music video where each guy gets their own like section of the video, so they're not all together. And that's kind of how I became a fan. So it's like a very special song to me. So those two I would say are my favorites, but I like Right Now just a little bit more. Also very important, books that feel like the color pink. You can tell by my outfit, I'm a big fan of the color pink. My lipstick is pink. My shirt is pink. A lot of my romance books up here are pink. Generally, just very good. So when I think of the color pink, I'm not thinking of Pepto-Bismol pink, by the way. I'm thinking of like these pinks, okay? Very colorful, very bright, very vibrant. So we're thinking books that feel vibrant. Books that feel like you're running through a tulip field. Books that feel like you're waking up and the sun is out and your class has been canceled and you're going to go hang out with your friends, because that's what I did today. You're looking for a bit of romance, a bit of flavor. I found 4 books from my romance shelf that I think perfectly describe the color pink. They don't have to be pink to feel like pink. You'll see what I mean when I explain what the books are about. This one is called Jane in Love by Rachel Givney, and it is not exactly fantasy, but it has the fantasy element of time travel, but it is directly a romance book based on the plot and characters. So this is about when Jane Austen time travels forward in time to when her book is being adapted into a movie, but she hasn't written any of her books yet. So she's feeling very decentered in life. She doesn't really feel like she has any path forward. And when she moves to modern time, when they're making her movie, she realizes, wait, I'm like famous and apparently everyone loves me and I'm making friends. And what's this modern world? And what's a cell phone and a car? And it's really funny. And she has a romance with the lead actress's brother, whose name is Frederick Wentworth. And it has the most crushing ending I've ever read. But it feels like the color pink because she is moving from this very restrictive society to a society where like women can wear pants and like vote and like own a house and have custody of children and are treated more like human beings. I don't want to say fully like human beings because like depends on the area, but more like human beings. And I'm obsessed with this book. I have yapped about it constantly on Instagram and TikTok and also YouTube a fair few times because I do love my YouTube audience as well. But this feels like the color pink because it is vibrant. She's exposed to real life and all that that entails and the magic of it. Meet Me in the Margins by Melissa Ferguson. Melissa Ferguson is the author that first got me into romance books when I was about 16 or 17. I had primarily been reading nonfiction when I was a teenager because I just hadn't found any books that really gelled with my brain. If that makes sense, a lot of YA books felt like they were overly spicy, and I was terrified of spice when I was younger. I've adjusted more around it where I'm still not a big spice fan, but I can like work around it in a book, and I wasn't very good at that when I was younger. But Meet Me in the Margins is spice free. So, and this is an adult romance. This isn't even like a teen romance. The characters are like 30. And I really, really enjoyed it. It is like the movie You've Got Mail with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, if you've seen that. And basically, this woman works at a publishing company and she's working on a manuscript and she keeps it in this file cabinet. And she randomly finds it one day and there are edits all over it. And it's called Meet Me in the Margins because this mysterious man who works at the company, whoever he may be, is making edits on her book to improve it and telling her, like, hey, this is good, you should publish it, but here's what you need to work on. And at first, she's massively offended because she's like, well, this is my work. Why are you involving yourself in this? This is very private. And then he randomly found it, but he starts making edits. And then she's trying to figure out who it is in the company and work out her own personal issues with some family and some love life drama. And it feels like a rom com just written down. But the reason that it feels like the color pink is because pink, to me, is the color of romance. I know that everyone says that red is, but to me, pink is just like flirty and fashionable, a little bit on the nose, a little bit obvious. But I just got this in the mail the other day, and I got the movie on DVD as well. It is The Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot. Cabot? Cabot. Cabot. Cabot? I don't know. But it is about a girl who finds out that she is the princess of a country that she never knew about. And this is kind of like the OG princess book, because I know a lot of books and tropes have come out of that. And this came out in 2000. The movie came out in 2001 with the iconic Anne Hathaway. I'm sure you've seen it. And if you haven't, you're not welcome here anymore. I'm just joking. But I just got the movie on DVD, and I'm very excited about that. But I realized I haven't read the book, so I should really read the book. And the Vampire Diaries also came out in the 2000s, so I'm getting into 2000s culture in general. But Mia Thermopolis is the girl's character name, and it feels pink because she's a teenager, and she was very shy, kind of sheltered, didn't really have a lot of friends, wasn't popular in school. Who is when they're 15? I wasn't. And now I'm fine. I just do videos by myself in my room. But The Princess Diaries feels like the color pink. And that's all I'm going to say. This is the first thing that I thought of when I read this question. Books that feel like a Taylor Swift song on a winter's day. I automatically have exactly what you're looking for. Hold on. I picked up Shakespeare Was a Woman and Other Heresies by Elizabeth Winkler. Because Elizabeth Winkler, if you don't know, is an iconic nonfiction author of one of the only books that I could find about the theory that Shakespeare was not a man, but a woman. And these songs that Taylor Swift writes that feel like a winter's day are, in my mind, folklore and evermore, and read Taylor's version when it was rebranded to be more fall and wintry. But a lot of those songs are very female rage aesthetic. And it feels very like you're undercut. You feel devalued. You feel like you're being treated as less than a person, and you're angry, and you're depressed, and you're divorced. And here's that book. Shakespeare Was a Woman and Other Heresies by Elizabeth Winkler is a thrilling investigation into the origins of literature's greatest taboo, the question of whether William Shakespeare wrote his plays. Writers and thinkers have harbored doubts across centuries. Scholars admit that the Bard's biography is a black hole, yet to publicly question the identity of the god of Shakespeare is unacceptable, even immoral. It goes into how she visited a lot of Shakespearean scholars, and they were not willing to even discuss the idea that Shakespeare could be a woman because they all have revered the idea of the iconic male playwright for so long, 500 years basically. And to me, that really ties into the general concept of female rage, which is this very secretive, internalized anger that you just encounter in your day-to-day life, where you get treated differently, or you get undercut, or you don't feel like you get the same access or privileges as other people do, and you just sort of keep that to yourself and you don't talk about it because it's not commonly talked about. And Shakespeare Was a Woman talks about how one woman who wanted to be a playwright, but that was not acceptable for the time, could have made this whole con, basically, and conned the entire English literature community for centuries and pretended to be a man. Book Girl by Sarah Clarkson. Because the other thing that Taylor Swift songs on a winter's day remind me of are something very cozy. something that makes you feel very warm and quilted and blanketed like hot chocolate. And Book Girl by Sarah Clarkson, she's pregnant when she wrote this, and she's thinking about all the books that have made a difference throughout her life and have shaped her, and how she wants to raise her kids, and what she can do to make them more literate in media. Because this came out in 2018, it is now 2026, and media literacy has gone even further down the drain with the age of AI and TikTok and overconsumption. Media literacy is becoming rapidly harder to find, I guess the term is. Even for me, I noticed the difference. And this book is one advocate for reading and for research and for understanding things for yourself from a very young age. And that is the end of the questions. We have talked about books, we have talked about studying, we have answered some fan questions, we've talked about reading and winter and Taylor Swift and vampires and all of the important topics in 2026. And thank you so much for watching. And if you want to like and subscribe, that would be lovely, because then the video is shown to more people and then you can see more of me, which is what everyone wants, including me. And if you liked these books, I talk about them constantly on social media, so you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok to see some comedy stuff that I do as well. I'm always there, I'm always making things, and I'm always reaching out to you guys for ideas on what to include. And I had so much fun answering your questions, and I hope to do this again soon, and I will see you next time. Bye!